Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another session of Business World Insights with the theme Energizing a Cleaner and Greener Future. My name is Victor Saulon, Business World sub editor, and I will be your host and moderator for today's session about the Philippine Energy Transition Roadmap. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change stated that shifting to renewable energy is among the top solutions to at least halving global greenhouse gas emissions by 2030. As a tropical archipelago, the Philippines has substantial reasons to fear the effects of climate change. Worsening typhoons and rising ocean levels, not to mention dangerously intense heat waves and extensive damage to natural resources, can put millions of Filipinos at risk. Much of this burden falls onto the shoulders of the country's energy sector, as facilitating a smooth transition to clean and sustainable renewable energy can contribute to the global effort towards a net zero future. To aid in this endeavor, the Philippine Electricity Market Corporation has partnered with the United Nations Office for Projects and Services to launch a study aimed at establishing an energy transition roadmap and introducing market mechanisms and enhancements promoting participation in the market of renewable energy and sustainable technologies while encouraging supply stability and diversification. Today, we are joined by some of the best experts in the country's energy scene. We'll be hearing opening statements from each speaker first, and we will proceed to a free flowing panel discussion. Before we call them on screen, just a reminder to our audience that we'll be having questions later during the Q&A. So be sure to send them in the comments section, which our team will be monitoring. Now, without further ado, let's start our discussion. Our first speaker is currently the president of the Philippine Electricity Spot Market, or PEMC, a non-stock nonprofit corporation that governs the wholesale electricity spot market, a venue for trading electricity as a commodity. He manages the day to day affairs of the corporation and ensures quality governance of the WESM to ensure energy security, efficiency, and competition in the industry. Prior to his election to PEMC, he was Assistant Secretary of the Department of Energy, where he wrote Executive Order Number 30, Series of 2017, creating the Energy Investment Coordinating Council in order to streamline the regulatory procedures affecting energy projects, which, on a micro perspective, improve the regulatory framework in striking the right balance between streamlining processes to encourage business and at the same time keeping with the letter and intent of energy laws. Mr. Polido also has an undeniable passion for electric vehicles to mitigate climate change and create environmental sustainability. Please welcome Mr. Leonido J. Pulido III. Bodhi, thank you for joining us. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Vic, for the kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We'd like to share our slides so that we have a reference for our discussion for today. So, good morning again. And so we start off by talking about, of course, the government to government, the agreement on the commitment to combat climate change, and this is, of course, the basic instrument that we all refer to as 26 Conference of Parties, or COP26, wherein the Philippines renewed its commitment to reduce carbon emissions by 75% by 2030, hopefully through climate change mitigation actions that are, well, essentially locally driven and that can be instilled in our day-to-day or daily lives. And so pursuant to this, next slide, please. The Department of Energy back in 2020 or 2019, if I'm not mistaken, came up with its 2020-2040 Philippine Energy Plan, and they made a commitment to target under a clean energy scenario to increase the current percentage of renewable energy from 35% to 50% share in our country's power generation mix, hopefully by 2040. Historically, the spot market and PEMC have been in the forefront of introducing and commercially reinforcing the development and utilization of renewables. The market played a very vital role in what we believe is a catalyst for us to transition to cleaner energy use by placing measures that would incentivize our energy transition. With the technical assistance provided by the World Bank, PEMC was able to comply with its task under the Renewable Energy Act to formulate certain changes to the WESM rules, which prescribe guidelines to implement preferential dispatch for renewable energy resources in the electricity market. Now, this preference in the dispatch of emerging renewable energy resources has already been implemented with solar, wind, run-of-river hydro resources classified as must dispatch generating units, while our FIT entitled biomass were given or accorded priority dispatch generating units. Now, the acknowledgement of preferential dispatch generating units in market rules, this is actually a pioneering effort in Asia. And this effort of providing preferential dispatch to RE yielded an additional 50% to the total RE capacity participating in the market. Currently, registered capacity of preferential dispatch resources in the WESM totals to about 1,800 megawatts, coming from a meager level of 350 megawatts prior to the effort of giving preferential dispatch to renewable energy. Now, noting the contribution of various technologies to the power supply situation in the country, PEMC signed a partnership agreement with the UN, or United Nations Office for Project Services, through the Southeast Asian Energy Transition Partnership, or ETP. The efforts under the ETP will be initiated through a study on the participation of battery and other energy storage systems in the electricity market, which is actually this is a follow-through of the technical committee's study, which was conducted back in 2018. Now, the study initially determined that the current rules that we already have provide a suitable foundation or the essential protocols that are necessary to adequately integrate battery and other energy storage systems into the grid, just like essentially any other facility participating in the market. In fact, this type of facility has a dedicated category when registering in the market and has their scheduling, dispatch, and settlement already internally facilitated in the market. However, as we like to say, good intentions are not enough. We hear this often. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Besides good intentions, we have to be very, very careful on the other parts of the framework. So we believe that the compliance and monitoring framework may need some fortification or improvements to temper or even deter the storage's considerable opportunities to significantly affect the prices and outcomes in the spot market, which in turn could be disadvantageous to other market players, including variable RE facilities. And so we have to be careful because the benefits that we reap from the introduction of renewable energy in the spot market, which includes, of course, reduced market prices, may unintentionally be reversed if we are not very careful regarding the framework for BESS or other ESS. And another effort of the market in the energy transition is, of course, the launching of the commercial operations of the Philippine renewable energy market. That was thankfully well attended physically and online by both the RE market participants and other market stakeholders. The renewable energy market, or what we call the REM fondly, will commercially operate this week on August 26th. It is established mainly to serve as the venue for the buying and selling of renewable energy certificates, or RECs, so that the mandated participants can comply with their annual renewable portfolio standards, or the RPS, which they do so by retiring the number of RECs that are required for a particular or any given compliance period. Now, the compliance with the RPS, of course, will be measured in terms of RE certificates. The RE certificate, or renewable energy certificate, refers to a certificate issued by PEMC for 1 megawatt hour of electricity generation that is sourced from an eligible renewable energy generation facility. The REC is the main commodity or product that will be transacted or marketed in the REM. Besides this, this is essentially the REM currently is for mandated or required participants, but in the near future, we are already studying the implementation of the voluntary renewable energy market, which will allow qualified end users to participate in the market and contribute to achieving their while our country's ambitious clean energy transition objectives. These qualified end users can start from the RE100 companies displayed on the slide before you, who have set up their businesses in the Philippines and may would want to adhere to their company's global energy transition goals through a subscription to reputable reporting frameworks such as CDP Global, RE100, and Race to Zero. The voluntary REM market will complement the existing REM compliance market by enabling end users to actively participate in the renewable energy market and can have direct access to certified RE products. To this end, we intend to study the framework that can be adopted in the Philippines for the implementation of a voluntary renewable energy market, identify the necessary amendments to the market rules and manuals aligned with the framework, and formulate the software specifications of the system that can implement such corresponding processes. The study we're conducting will also concretize the institutional arrangements with registries of similar nature in order to ensure that there is no double counting of the certificates or TRCs derived from the same renewable energy generation as required for participation in the Philippine renewable energy market. So we at PEMC, we believe that there's quite a lot of work to be done for us to transition to a green economy. But we, like we always say in PEMC, we have to start somewhere. There is no such thing as a perfect plan or a perfect effort. What we can do is just to start and keep grinding and keep going. And we believe that the market is one of the effective tools in reaching that energy transition, because we are able to make the most out of the electricity market by leveraging on the efficiency and the dynamism of our stakeholders. In closing, and to summarize, the WESM and PEMC has, among others, contributed and will contribute the following initiatives to further our country's clean energy transition. First, as we discussed earlier, the preferential dispatch for renewable energy resources in the market, our continuing study in the participation of battery and other energy storage systems, the commercial operations of the renewable energy market for mandated participants, and hopefully in the near future, the participation of qualified parties in a voluntary renewable energy market. And again, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having us and PEMC here.
Thank you, Bodhi. Our second speaker is currently the OIC Director of the Energy Policy and Planning Bureau of the Department of Energy. He supervises the formulation and updating of the Philippine Energy Plan and regional and provincial energy plans and programs for major islands and provinces, including the energy demand and supply outlook. He likewise oversees the conduct of policy research and studies and the international cooperation undertakings of the department on matters relating to climate change and energy resiliency. He had worked with the Asia Pacific Energy Research Center based in Tokyo, Japan, as a visiting senior researcher, energy economist for more than 3 years. His primary involvement was in the formulation of the APEC energy demand and supply outlook, specifically handling energy investment, renewable energy, and the Philippine energy outlook. He was also designated as the project coordinator for the APEC Oil and Gas Security Initiative, covering the conduct of research and studies and simulations and exercises on oil and gas supply disruptions and emergencies. Please welcome Mr. Michael Sino Cruz. Michael, you have the screen.
Thank you, Sir Victor, Sir Vic. So, good morning to everyone. With regard to the energy transition, as mentioned earlier by Attorney Pulido, we just recently published the Philippine Energy Plan covering the period 2020 to 2040. And under this Philippine Energy Plan, we set a target of increasing the RE share to 35% by 2030 and increasing further to 50% by 2040. And aside from the increase in the share of RE, what is important for us is to have a transition fuel, meaning we need to have a flexible fuel to be able to support the entry of more renewable energy, specifically variable RE such as solar and wind. So in our simulation on the outlook, we can see the increasing share also of natural gas being a flexible fuel to be able for us to support more RE in our system. And I'd like to note as well that currently we do have a moratorium on coal. So right now, in our outlook, there will be no more additional coal power plants to be built. Uh, Aside from those power plants considered as committed projects. So we're just talking here of around 3,000 megawatts that will come in as committed projects between from this year up to 2025 or 2027. So aside from renewable energy, energy efficiency will also play a critical role to attain this energy transition. And we are fortunate that we do have now a law on energy efficiency and conservation, which was passed in 2019. And the Department of Energy issued several policies, no, to be able to support and to implement, no, immediately the law, um, as well as to mandate the designated establishments to submit a an energy efficiency plan, as well as the local government units will have also to formulate their own energy efficiency plan and the establishment of an office, including the designation of an energy efficiency officer. So aside from energy efficiency and renewable energy, we're also looking at other emerging technologies such as nuclear and hydrogen. So right now we have this nuclear energy program. We're looking at whether we can reintroduce again nuclear energy in our system. And aside from the conventional nuclear, which the capacity of which is around 1,000 megawatts on the average, we are studying, no, and looking at the small modular reactor. So the small modular reactor, the capacity of which is around the maximum, I think, is around 300 megawatts, while the lowest would be around even 50 megawatts. But there is also a micro modular reactor, no, which is around 20 megawatts. So well, why do we or why the Department of Energy is also looking at the small modular reactor? So being an archipelagic country, so we do have many island provinces wherein these provinces need a reliable source of power. So we're thinking of if we are ready, really ready, no, satisfying the infrastructure requirements of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Um, Once we satisfy these 19 infrastructure requirements of issues, and then we are ready, no, to launch or to build a nuclear power plant. So we are also looking at the development of this small modular reactor, wherein we can put this in island provinces for more reliable supply of electricity. So aside from nuclear, we are also studying the possibility of the development of hydrogen. So the green hydrogen, so we can develop the green hydrogen through renewable. Since we are going to push more of the renewable energy, increasing the share, so we can utilize this renewable capacities to be able to produce the green, what we call the green hydrogen. And currently, there's still ongoing studies. There are ongoing studies on hydrogen, and hopefully in the future, the hydrogen can be affordable, no? Just like the renewable energy technologies. Because before, these RE technologies were expensive then. But over the years, no, because of economies of scale and higher demand for renewable energy, so the costs gradually decreased, no, in the past years. No? So similarly, we're looking at hydrogen in the future that it will become affordable. So once it becomes affordable, so we can adapt this hydrogen, which is clean, to be able to diversify our mix of clean energy, not only relying on renewable energy. So there are also other emerging technologies like the carbon capture, storage, and utilization. Although currently it's still expensive, excuse me. But once developed, and just like the RE technology, in the future, the cost of this CCUS will become cheaper in the future. So we can also adopt this carbon capture, storage, and utilization. So once we adopt this kind of technology, we can still maintain some amount of fossil fuels, like for instance natural gas, but the carbon emission can be captured through this CCUS. So these are the things that we are looking at, and other emerging technologies, because from hydrogen we can also produce ammonia. So ammonia can be used as co-firing fuel for other clean energy sources. And lastly, um, we're thinking of when we update the next Philippine Energy Plan, we're thinking of considering the energy efficiency as the fifth fuel for the Philippine energy sector, because energy efficiency will, as I mentioned earlier, will play a significant role in our effort to realize a clean economy, no? A clean energy economy in the future. So right now, our policy is just for us to attain a just transition to clean energy. We're not yet embracing a net zero. We need to study more on the mix, what would be the optimal mix for us to achieve the net zero. The other ASEAN member states are some of the ASEAN member states are have already committed for a net zero emission, but not on the 2050, but beyond 2050, 2060, and 2070. And we are starting to study whether the Philippines can also embrace in the future a net zero scenario, but it will be beyond 2050, just like other ASEAN member states. I think that's all. Thank you and good morning to everyone.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker is Ms. Sharon Ocampo Montañer. She's the director of the Market Operations Service, or MOS, of the Energy Regulatory Commission. An economist by profession, she has 20 years of experience in energy regulation and was tasked to handle renewable energy when the Renewable Energy Act was passed in 2008. As director of MOS, she supervises the spot market division, which is in charge of monitoring wholesale electricity spot market, the contestable market division, which is in charge of monitoring the competitive retail electricity market, the licensing and market monitoring division, which is in charge of the issuance and monitoring of certificates of compliance to generation companies, and the renewable energy division, which is in charge of the development, implementation, monitoring, and review of the programs under the Renewable Energy Act. Everyone, please welcome Ms. Sharon Ocampo Montañer. Sharon, welcome to the panel.
Thank you, Victor. And good morning, everyone. First of all, in behalf of the ERC and our chairperson and CEO, Mona Lisa C. De Malanta, I would like to thank the business world and the partners for inviting us to share our regulatory policies that supports the Philippines' energy transition. I couldn't agree more with the topic, as climate change is one of the most pressing issue of our time, as evidenced by the extreme weather conditions that is happening in our country and around the world. And it is imperative that we all take leaps, not just steps, to keep the increase in the global average temperature below the 2 degrees Celsius level. And that leap is the transition to a sustainable future. Since the enactment of the RE Act in 2008, we have seen the growth in the deployment of RE technologies with substantial cost reductions as a driving force. Things that previously seemed out of reach, the endless, green, and cost efficient energy to drive and sustain development, are now possible. Per the data from the DOE, from the enactment of the RE law in 2008 up to the end of 2021, there were a total of 2,699.79 megawatts of green capacity additions to the grid, with total investment cost of 262.002 billion. And with that, 189,023 green jobs were created and 25.973 million tons of GHG emissions reduced. And the question is, are we there yet? Well, far from it, but it is a good start nevertheless. And we at the Energy Regulatory Commission has been very serious in providing the level playing field for this green energy to come in. The key actually is the two-pronged approach. First is to encourage additional supply, and at the same time or parallel to that is to manage the demand. So let me go into details. On the supply side, to encourage the entry of emerging renewable energy, and by emerging, these are those that mentioned by President Modi as those enjoying mass dispatch and priority dispatch as mandated in the RE Act. We implemented the feed-in tariff program. A total of 1,358.962 megawatts of capacity came in under this program, of which 32% is solar, 28% is wind, 25% is biomass, and 15% is run-of-river hydro. Aside from the FIT, we have continued to resolve power supply agreements for renewable energy. We have likewise supported the Department of Energy in the Green Energy Auction Program through the setting of the Green Energy Auction Reserve Prices, which served as the offer cap in the recently concluded auction, which, by the way, was a success. In tandem with the lowering of prices of these technologies in the world market, the programs I mentioned have eased their entry into the country. For example, for solar alone, at the start of implementation of the RE Act, it was very expensive technology. The cost of putting it up then was at 9.68 per kilowatt hour. This was way back in 2010 to 2012 under the first round of the FIT program. After a year, in the second round, it went down by 10%. And to date, under the Green Energy Auction Program and the PSAs approved by the Commission, the cost has further gone down by 60 to 63% from that initial FIT level. This is clearly a case of a technology reaching grid parity, already able to compete with conventional technologies. And we see more supply coming in under the renewable portfolio standards and the setting up of the renewable energy market as detailed by President Modi in his presentation earlier, as the participants source mandated percentage of their supply from renewable energy and or sell or procure renewable energy certificates from the RE market for compliance. Now I go on the demand side. While additional supply in the grid is sought, parallel programs on the demand side is being implemented. The demand side is where there was a drastic change in the electricity landscape from the one-way flow of electricity as we know it to a two-way flow of electricity. This marked the empowering of the consumers to becoming prosumers with the ability to produce electricity for their own use and selling to the grid their excess. This started when the ERC implemented the net metering program in 2013, which we revised and updated to remove the administrative barriers for its successful implementation in 2019. To date, a total of 6,791 customers are under this program with a total capacity of 55,929.94 kilowatt peak. But the net metering program is limited only to 100 kilowatt installation as provided in the RE Act and only for on-grid. We are now looking into the development of this program to implement in the off-grid. And then just last year, the ERC promulgated the regulatory framework to operationalize the Green Energy Option Program, another program under the RE Act. This, again, is empowerment of consumers, and it gives the option to the consumers to choose renewable energy as their source of supply. As of July 31, there are a total of 69 consumers under this program with a total peak demand of 23,518.67 kilowatt. The ERC is likewise developing the rules on the distributed energy resources as we see a huge potential in this. Imagine allowing through clear regulatory framework the installations of solar in rooftops of buildings, condominiums, residences, commercial centers, and the like, and giving that power or option to the consumers to be prosumers. And imagine consumers playing a vital role also in the energy transition. All this together with the energy efficiency program, as mentioned by Director Michael earlier of the DOE, they are tools to manage the demand level so that not all will be taken from the grid supply. With enough supply in the grid and a healthy supply margin, we will see prices going down as there will be healthy competition. Then the ERC will be able to reach the twin goal of encouraging clean and renewable energy and at the same time ensuring reasonable cost of electricity. Lastly, there are new developments in the industry that will help ease and address some of the difficulties in the energy transition, and that is energy storage system and the electric vehicles. The ERC is now preparing the regulatory framework for this, and we hope to issue clear guidelines the soonest possible time. We recognize the ERC's role in the energy transition as a crucial one, and we intend to pave the way for a smooth and sustainable transition, and at the same time perform our mandate to protect and promote consumer interest. This we will do together with the Department of Energy and all other stakeholders in the electricity industry. That is why we are developing regulations to address the difficulties in the transition, to keep pace with new technologies, and finally to take advantage of innovations in technologies and markets, as mentioned by President Modi earlier, which is the voluntary market for the renewable energy market, in order to achieve energy independence. This is in consonance with the President's priority to develop renewable energy in the country. That's all. Thank you and mabuhay.
Thank you very much, Sharon. Now, may I invite our panelists back on screen for our discussion. Um, please feel free to jump in at any point with any insights or comments you might have. Our question, I believe most of you have touched on these questions, the questions during your presentation. But my question now is, how would you describe the improvement or the changes that has happened as far as increasing the share of RE in the country's energy supply mix in the past 5 years?
Hmm.
If you cannot quantify the numbers, just give us a description. Has it improved? Has it become bigger?
I, Sir
Yeah,
Vic,
the first. Yeah, go ahead,
just
Bodhi.
just an impression that I think that our colleagues in the DVC, Director Michael and Director Sharon from the ERC, I think they would have a better grasp, I guess, of the numbers involved. But I think the general impression, general takeaway from all the efforts that the relevant agencies have been taking over the last 5 years, the DOE has been very proactive in its policies and trying to develop more RE for energy transition. And we can see that from all of the policy directives that they've done. We can see from all the actions of the ERC that they've made a conscious effort to try to support the DOE in its energy transition plans. I'm very hopeful. I think all of the programs, policies, and actual actions of all of the relevant agencies, plus the very very concrete and very very active participation of the private sector. I think all of this have led to what I believe to be a very very fruitful 5 or 10 years. There's still a lot of work to do, and I think there's still a lot of challenges that we're facing, but I think we're all in the right direction. I think the people involved, their hearts are in the right place, the minds are in the right place, and so I'm very very optimistic about our country's energy transition plans.
Okay, Sir Michael.
Okay, thank you. So in the past 5 years, we have issued no, the remaining policy mechanisms for the to accelerate the deployment penetration of renewable energy. So we have issued the RPS and other policy mechanisms. We do have several programs right now in place, as mentioned earlier. The GEOP, the Green Energy Auction, the Green Energy Auction as well. And we're looking at the Green Energy Auction program is a way to support the RPS, and the RPS will be our vehicle no, to be able for us to meet our target of increasing the RE share to 35% in 2030 and 50% by 2040. So I think it was mentioned earlier that we just recently concluded the first auction involving 2,000 megawatts of RE technologies, and our success rate, I think, around 98%. So meaning we were able to bid out more than 1,900 megawatts. No? And this 1,900 megawatts will come in between 2020 from now 2023 to 2025. And since we're going to increase the renewable portfolio standard to currently 1% to about 2.52, or to increase further, that will depend on whether we're going to hit or meet our target of 35 percent and 50%. So far in the last 5 years, so we just formulated, issued the remaining policy mechanism. So we saw a significant increase in the RE capacities in the last 5 years. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the share of RE in the mix right now is 30%.
No, the share of RE in terms of power generation is around 22%. But when I talk
22%.
of 22%,
And then
total power generation.
in
Yeah.
terms of installed capacity.
In terms of installed capacity, around 30%.
Okay. Mm.
But in terms of
And
generation, it's around 22%.
you mentioned earlier that the DOE is coming up with an optimal mix. I just want to get a feel of what you think is the optimal mix for the Philippines.
Okay. The optimal mix, when we talk of our efforts towards clean, low carbon economy, is just we need to have a lower cost, the mix that will provide us the lower cost at the same time, lower emission. So there were several studies conducted when we go 100% RE, we're going to have a zero emission, but the cost would be not that. Or it will be higher, no, compared with if you're going to blend or mix our renewable energy with other technologies.
Okay.
So currently, my team right now we are discussing what would be the optimal mix if we're going to adopt a net zero scenario in the future, maybe beyond 2050.
Ma'am Sharon, from the point of view of the ERC, what is the current state of the Philippine energy sector as far as the
Oh,
share of RE in the whole energy supply mix?
well, as I mentioned earlier in my opening statement, each of the programs under the RE Act that was implemented, there were capacity additions already, and I think that would be a good measure of whether it is successful or not. But definitely there were additions, and as to the rate at which the RE additions came in, for the supply side on the FIT, the green energy auction, it was very significant. Now, on the demand side, the net metering, the green energy auction program, um, and our desire that the rooftop solar will proliferate at the consumer level, that is yet to be seen. We have improved the net metering rule since its inception in 2013 to at least remove the administrative barriers that is within the control of the ERC. And there was an improvement, there was an uptick in the addition. However, I could not really say that it is successful. More information drives need to be conducted for consumers to be empowered and to know that there are programs such as this that they can avail of. So I think a lot has significantly happened on the supply side, but on the demand side and also the energy efficiency, there is much room for improvement.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. The second question is, can you share with us your thoughts on what should be included in the energy transition roadmap? What factors need to be considered, and what steps um, does the industry need to take to establish this? Michael earlier mentioned about including energy efficiency into the mix. Are there other ideas, policies, or um, initiatives from our regulators or policymakers that we can look forward to?
Um, yeah, on the part of ERC, what we've seen really is addressing some of the technical difficulties in transitioning to a higher penetration of renewable energy, and that is first the intermittency of these renewable energy sources. And it was mentioned by President Bodhi and also Director Michael earlier, and as I already also mentioned, that we're looking into energy storage system as one way to address these technical difficulties. So we each have our own efforts already, taking on the part of ERC, taking off from the DC of the DOE on the BESS. We're doing our study already in trying to come up with a regulatory framework for that BESS.
Michael?
Okay, thank you. For the DOE side, as I mentioned earlier, so we are also looking at other emerging technologies, not only renewable energy. So I mentioned the possibility we're studying right now, the possibility of for us, for the Philippines to reintroduce again nuclear energy, and the development of the hydrogen. We have actually entered into a partnership with an Australian company and a Japanese company to study the potential for the Philippines to produce and use hydrogen in the future. But as also mentioned earlier, currently the price of hydrogen is still expensive, but we are optimistic that just like in the past, no, our technology, specifically solar and wind, they were very expensive at that time. But over the years, no, due to higher demand and meeting the economies of scale, no, so the cost went down. So similarly, we hope that the hydrogen in the future, the cost of which will also go down, so that we can also include hydrogen in our energy mix in the future. So these are the things that we're looking at. We need to have a technology roadmap for the clean energy, so that we need to have a blended fuel or mix of fuel together with renewable energy. And so far right now, the transition, the challenge of which right now is that because we're looking at natural gas as a flexible fuel, natural gas will support the variable RE. However, currently we are seeing increasing prices of oil, coal, and even natural gas. So that's a challenge for us because of increasing natural gas. Whether those projects that are right now considered as indicative, or the question would be is whether these projects will push through in the future, considering the increasing price of LNG or natural gas in the international market. Thank you.
You were referring to import terminals, LNG import
Yes, yes,
terminals.
yes, correct.
So, have any of the project proponents talked to you about canceling or postponing their
No, not
projects?
yet, not yet. But there are three committed projects. There are the two, the Linseed and the first gen will come in. I think Linseed will come in. This is in partnership with Osaka Gas. Will come in. I think last quarter of this year or first quarter next year. Similarly with First Gas, no, First Gen rather, First Gen. This is in partnership with Tokyo Gas. I think fourth quarter of this year. And then there's another one, the Energy World. I think next year as well, first quarter. But the other three projects, which are still indicative, that is a we really don't know yet whether the project will push through, no? Because of the increasing price.
Mhm. Sir Bodhi, you've been a very good source at the DOE before. What's your thought on what should be included in the energy transition roadmap?
I think one of the critical things that we have to be looking at is, first, we admit it's a transition. We agree it's a transition. And so if it's a transition, then we would need something to bridge a gap. And so it's highly debated. A lot of environmentalists would probably disagree with me, but I think natural gas is something that we should consider seriously. And I believe the DOE, before I left the DOE, it was really something that we believe to be the proper transition fuel, or the proper bridging technology, as we shift to the use of, or the more use of cleaner technologies. But what cannot be denied, insofar as the debate that revolves around the use of natural gas as a bridging fuel, is the fact that it is much cleaner than existing conventional technologies such as oil or coal. But the challenge really is, how do you plan the transition in such a way that, as the economies of scale come in, and renewable energy technologies and battery energy storage system technologies become much more cheaper, and become very more competitive, more efficient, more larger in scale, we need to plan it in such a way that there is a proper exit for the companies that have invested in the bridging fuel and the bridging technology. So really, the time frame and the entrance of all of these technologies have to be very carefully taken into account. What cannot be denied is, we need that bridging fuel. We need that bridging technology. We cannot just wake up one day and decide, oh, we're going to go all complete renewable. It's just not physically, practically, technologically possible. As much as we would want that, it just can't be done. And so the planning really has to be very carefully done, and it has to take into account a lot of the scientific objective parameters and circumstances, without it being too politicized. I appreciate what Director Michael said earlier. We need to revisit as well whether or not we can use nuclear technology in the Philippines. Again, like natural gas being a bridging fuel, it's highly debated and highly politicized um, issue. But when it comes to something like energy, we would want to depend on the science and the engineers rather than the politicians involved. And so that's my take on it, Vic. Thanks.
Thank you, Bodhi. I'm going back to Sir Michael. You mentioned modular nuclear reactors earlier. How soon can we expect this to be part of the DOE's plan
Okay.
or policies?
Okay. Before we uh, put the first nuclear power plant here in the Philippines, no, we need to satisfy first the 19 infrastructure requirements of the International Atomic Energy Agency. The IAEA is the international regulator for nuclear. So right now we are still in milestone one. So milestone two is the construction, but under the milestone one, we need to satisfy, as mentioned earlier, the 19 infrastructure issues. No, like for instance, the siting, the human resource, the safety and standards, the legal and regulatory framework. So we need to have all of this in place before we construct our first nuclear power plant in the Philippines again. No? So right now there's a pending bill previously, no, and then we need to refile again to the present Congress. Yung there's a pending bill on establishing an atomic regulatory commission, which is separate, which should be a separate function from the Philippine Nuclear Research Institute, because the PNRI right now is both the regulator at the same time the promoter. PNRI promotes nuclear energy as well as conducts research on nuclear energy, aside from being the regulator. So the pending bill is will it will the regulatory function of PNRI will be separated, and then we will create a separate agency for that.
Can you confidently say that we will have nuclear as part of the mix within the current administration?
Well, so far, we heard from the persona of the president that the president right now is also considering nuclear energy. So the good thing for us is it will be a continuing program from the past administration to the current administration. So our initiatives that we have done in the past, no, will continue. So right now, as I mentioned earlier, we're looking at the small modular reactor, because the small modular reactor we can save time in terms of construction. So if you're going to put in place all the infrastructure requirements as mandated, or as a policy of the IAEA, no? So we can at the earliest, because the it's a modular, so you can put this SMR in just a year or two. So ano na yan, it's a they can just deliver the modular, and then put in a location wherein we have a stable geological condition. So before, if for instance 5 years we can satisfy all the 19, so within 7 to 10 years we can have the small modular reactor, because we can save time on the construction. Thank you.
How about acceptance from the community? Have you checked on this? Supposing you put up a modular reactor in an island province,
Okay.
how soon can we get them to accept this, to agree
So
to
actually we
this?
did a perception survey, I think way back in 2019, no? We tapped SWS to do the perception survey for on the acceptance of renewable of nuclear energy. And fortunately, we got positive a reaction, no? Around 70% based on the survey conducted by SWS. 70% willing or willing to to accept nuclear energy as part of the energy mix of the Philippines. So that is based on the SWS. So we are also planning to conduct another survey, and we are formulating a strategic communication plan to be able to educate the public about nuclear energy. So we are partnering with PCOO to be able to develop this strategic communication plan for nuclear energy.
On the part of the ERC, do we have is the commission ready to come up with a regulation for nuclear?
We have not started anything yet. We're still waiting for a policy direction from the Department of Energy, and should there be a pronouncement from the DOE already, we will abide by the policy of the DOE on that, and we will provide the regulatory framework if we will be tasked to do it.
Thank you, Sharon. Um, Another question is, how should the country approach the topic of receiving financial aid to assist in the transition, especially at a time of great economic uncertainty? Anyone can answer.
Uh, okay. Well, under the Paris Agreement, there's what we call Article 8, no, or even I think Article 3, wherein that's why in our nationally determined contribution, our NDC, no, we committed a, conditional reduction of 75%. No, it's the 75% reduction is a combination of conditional and unconditional. And out of the 75, I think only 2 point something, no, 2.7% will be unconditional. The 72% will be conditional, meaning we can meet such given that the developed countries will provide us assistance in terms of financing, technology, and capacity building. So my take on that, yes, okay, we can accept assistance, financing assistance, but we need to limit such to it's a assistance, but not should be considered as a loan. No? It should be a grant, or there could be a combination of a grant and loan, but not so much on the loan. No? So actually, we are receiving several proposals from Energy Transition Council, and there are several sub programs under this council. There is what we call ETP, the Energy Transition Program. There's also a program on the early retirement of coal. Although we are still discussing this because we cannot really retire coal at this moment because we need available capacity. Whatever available capacity that we can tap to be able for us to provide reliable and sufficient supply for our local economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. We're running out of time, so maybe we can proceed to our closings. So I'd like to invite each of our speakers to share some final words with our audience. Um, Maybe you can start with Sharon, followed by Bodhi and Michael.
Okay, thank you, Victor. Yes, well, there are lots of development in the electricity industry, specifically on renewable energy, and it's really fast-paced. And we intend to keep up as much as possible in order to provide clear regulations to take advantage of all these innovations and with all that is happening in the electricity industry. It is an exciting time for the electricity industry in general and the renewable energy in particular. And we renew our commitment to play our role, understanding that it is very crucial in the energy transition. Thank you.
Bodhi?
Thanks, Victor. I think we really need um, an energy transition roadmap that is inclusive, that is sustainable, that is practical, that is not politicized, that is based on science, and one that is properly consulted with all the stakeholders, and one where a majority of the stakeholders are invested in, and one that they care about. And that roadmap is going to be critical in our energy transition plan, in our movement towards a cleaner energy future. It's going to be composed of a lot of critical components with very interdependent, correlatable parts. And so I believe we need to come together and develop such a policy, such a roadmap amongst not only the government, but with the active participation of the private sector. Thanks for having us again.
Thank you, Bodhi. Michael?
Okay. Um, for us to push forward for our energy transition, so we need to be open for other emerging technologies. Like as I mentioned, the other clean energy technologies like nuclear, hydrogen, ammonia, and others. Um, we also looking at whether such can be integrated or included in our energy mix in the future, given the projected cost of these other emerging technologies. We are also studying further whether in the future, no, we can also increase the share of RE from 50% to more than 50%. But I would like to stress right now that currently we are still our initiative is towards just transition. We are not yet embracing a net zero. As I mentioned earlier by President Woody, that because we do have a transition field, which is natural gas, we do have a natural gas industry. So we need to prepare such industry, for the eventual development or the development whether we're going to embrace net zero in the future. So that's why I mentioned earlier that the net zero will be embraced maybe after, no, or beyond 2050. Thank you and good morning.
Thank you once again to our panelists for sharing with us your time and expertise. Mr. Michael O. Sino Cruz, Mr. Leonido J. Pulido III, Ms. Sharon Ocampo Montañer. On behalf of Business World, thank you to our partners, Bank Marketing Association of the Philippines, Makati Business Club, Management Association of the Philippines, Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Philippines Franchise Association, and our media partner, the Philippine Star. Of course, to everyone who joined today's discussion, thank you very much. Please join us again in the next session of Business World Insights. Follow Business World online to be updated on our webinars and other projects. Again, this is Victor Saulon. Thank you and good afternoon.